Story time about how my husband forced me to do the dirty with another man and filmed it. Disclaimer isn't on my story time, it's on my Instagram. I told my husband to get rid of the video, but he doesn't want to. And now he's asking me to do it again with somebody else. Here's a little backstory. My husband and I have been married for 4 years. He's in the military, so he spends a lot of the time away from me. Now, sometimes I think this is a blessing, but it's also a curse. When he's away from me, he's really sweet. He sends me written hand letters saying how much he loves me and how much he misses me. But in the same breath, he'll turn around and accuse me of sleeping with somebody else because I didn't answer the phone while I was at the supermarket. He gets jealous at least once a week, and we always end up having a huge fight over the phone. But when he is home, he's completely hypersexual. He wants to do it all the time. And if I don't want to do it, he gets upset. He once told me that he should just have a girlfriend so that when I don't want to do it with him, he can have somebody else to do it with. And I know that you guys are going to say this is all toxic behavior, but I don't really try to correct his behavior. Because he's in the army, he thinks everything he does is right. And it's just easier for me to go along with it. Is that bad? Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my husband forced me into doing the dirty with another man while he filmed it. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's on Instagram. And now that I'm asking him to delete it, he says he won't. Like I said in part 1, he's in the army. So when he's home, he's super hypersexual. Always wants to have sex, and if I don't want to, he gets really mad. The last time he went away, he started writing to me about his new fantasy. And guess what his fantasy was? He wants to watch me do it with another man. But as soon as he told me, I said absolutely not. First off, I don't want to do it with any other guy. Secondly, I don't want to do it in front of my husband. Remember how I said he gets jealous and we always fight about it? He said that this way I could do it with any guy that I want and he wouldn't get jealous. I kept saying no for a full 2 days. That's when he started calling me every single night, telling me that if I loved him, I should just do it, and that so many other women would do anything to please their husbands. He even said that I should consider myself lucky that he would be willing to let me do it with somebody else. That's when he started sending me pictures of other men in the army, and he basically said, take your pick. But I kept saying no. Then he spent the next 2 weeks trying to convince me to do it. He wore me down so much that eventually I said yes. Part 3 of how my husband forced me into doing it with another man while he filmed it. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's on my Instagram. I finally gave in and said yes to doing it with another guy. I had literal knots in my stomach knowing that I was gonna have to do it. But I justified it because a lot of women do things that they normally wouldn't do for their husbands. So why shouldn't I? My husband finally came home from the army. 2 days later, he scheduled the meeting with the other guy. The guy that I chose from the pictures was actually really handsome. So the doing it part wasn't that hard. It was having my husband in the same room watching that was really hard. Then I noticed that my husband took out a camera. He was full on filming. I told him to turn that off and he said no. So after the guy left, I told my husband to delete the video. But he says he wants to keep it for when he goes away to the army. Everyone has their kinks, but this made me really uncomfortable. I actually feel like I can't trust that he won't show it to anybody. Imagine if he shows it to his army buddies. Now he's asking me to do it with another guy. What the heck should I do?
Am I wrong for revealing my pregnancy during my sister-in-law's wedding? I know it sounds bad, but hear me out. I, 27 female, found out I was pregnant about a month ago. I was planning to tell my husband, but I changed my mind after I wanted to tell everyone and excite my husband and family at the same time. Though I was honestly a little lazy and didn't want to plan an entire dinner or event to reveal my pregnancy. I knew my husband would be suspicious of why I suddenly wanted to host a dinner party. The only other event that everyone was going to attend was my sister-in-law's wedding. Now, personally, I don't like my sister-in-law. She's always on social media with 1,000 pictures every 10 seconds, flaunting her lavish lifestyle with her fiance's money. You just sound like a hater, and you want to use her event for your own benefit. Hater. My husband and I aren't wealthy, so I thought maybe revealing my pregnancy would mean I can get even about all those times she bragged about her expensive new purse. You're using your pregnancy as a leverage? It's dumb. The day of the wedding arrives and everything is just beautiful. I was honestly kind of amazed at how incredible it looked. I tried to find a nice time to reveal my pregnancy, but it was honestly much harder than I expected. Flash forward to when we were taking pictures and I gathered everyone up to make an announcement. I ecstatically announced my pregnancy. People like you are the worst kind of people. Oh, I don't like you. You were for sure the asshole. I don't have to read any more of this to say that though, but I'll keep going. But instead of getting congratulations, hugs, and kisses by the guests, all I got was kicked out. Good, you deserve to be. Everybody was whispering under their breath, but it was obvious to everyone that what I did was messed up. I don't understand why everyone was so negative about the situation. The most shocked about it was clearly my sister-in-law. She goes berserk, screaming about how I was always jealous of her and how I just couldn't keep help but ruining the best day of her life. I agree with her. Like, you literally said it from the beginning, your intention was bad. I was too shocked to make a sarcastic remark. She was screaming for me to get out. My husband just grabbed my hand and took us to our car. In the car, my husband lost his temper, and that's why I would ever possibly do such a thing. I hesitated to respond, but my husband sure didn't. He called me a massive prick and said I shouldn't have done what I did, but I don't understand. Every time my sister-in-law brags directly to my face, no one says anything to her. When we got home, I checked my sister-in-law's Instagram, and it was filled with exaggerated posts and way too many cringy emojis. You're a hater! I honestly feel kind of bad now that I thought about it, but I don't think I'll be satisfied until I get a professional response to my dilemma. So, am I the asshole? 100% for sure. Not only did you mess up your sister-in-law's wedding, that's your husband's sister. Like, your selfishness not only ruined it for yourself, but for your spouse. Like, be the bigger person in this situation. There are some times when it's okay to be petty, but this wasn't one of it.
Story time about how I ended up with 2 sugar daddies that I met at the strip club. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sent to me on Instagram. I have been a tripper for 2 years. And yes, I will be referring to myself as a tripper. A few months ago, I started looking for new ways to earn money because I don't want to be a tripper for the rest of my life. Well, around that time, a group of guys came into the club. One of them was super nice and he kept tipping me all night. He literally just talked to me the whole night. He didn't even get dances from other girls and didn't ask me to do anything else other than just talk. I basically made my entire rent just from all the tips he gave me. By the end of the night, he had asked me for my number and I gave it to him, which is super uncommon. I never give out my number, but this guy was really nice. A few days later, we went out to dinner and he asked me if I wanted to be his sugar baby. I said yes immediately. Ever since then, we hang out once a week and he pays me on average $4,000 a month. A few months into our arrangement, he asked me if I wanted to quit the strip club. I said probably not, but he told me that eventually he wanted me to. A few weeks ago, this new guy comes into the club and he also asked me to be his sugar baby, so I said yes. This is where things get scary. Part 2 is Part 2 of how I ended up with 2 sugar daddies I met at the trip club. Now I basically have to choose between one of them. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So this other guy comes into the club and asked me if I want to be a sugar baby. I immediately said yes. This man owned several businesses and everyone knew him around town. A week into our arrangement, he started becoming really jealous. He was constantly asking me if I had a boyfriend or if I had other sugar daddies. Of course I said no. That's when I realized I had to hide everything from both of these guys. Luckily, the second sugar daddy traveled a lot. He would FaceTime me all the time and even asked me to turn on my location. The only reason I put up with it was because he was giving me $7,000 a month. That's when sugar daddy number 1 asked me to quit the club again. And I basically said yes because I was getting enough money. I didn't realize it then, but he basically took that as me saying that I wanted to be in a relationship with him. That's when he started wanting to come over to my place all the time and basically spend every single day with me. So I would tell him I was going to the gym, but really I was going to go see my other sugar daddy. Then sugar daddy number 2 asked me if I wanted to move into a better apartment, and he became my co-signer. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how I ended up with 2 sugar daddies and I had to choose between one of them. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So sugar daddy number 2 offers me an apartment and wants to be my co-signer. And the apartment was so beautiful. It was 2 bedrooms, had a washer dryer inside the unit. It even had a doorman and a pool and everything. It was a huge step up from the place I had. This is when sugar daddy number 1 started getting really suspicious. He asked me how I could afford it. Then I broke the news to him that I had a second sugar daddy. He freaked out and told me I needed to choose between him or the other guy. I can't tell sugar daddy number 2 because he's super jealous, but my gut tells me to go with sugar daddy number 2. He pays me more money and gave me the apartment, but number 1 is super nice. But number 2 travels all the time, so I don't have to see him all the time. I don't know. What do you guys think I should do? I love my new apartment though. What do I do? Story time about how I found my husband using Tinder and all the freaking dating apps. Claim this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Once again, I'm at the airport. Sorry. Husband and I were both total sluts when we met. He was seeing like 10 girls when I first met him, and I was dating 3 guys at the time. Well, let me tell you, neither of us trusted each other, like not one bit. Eventually, he asked me to be his girlfriend, and I really wasn't sure if I wanted to say yes, but I did. He is so good looking. Like everywhere we go, we get told we're such a good looking couple. So we know we're both pretty good looking. To be fair, we were both addicted to Instagram. I would get tons of DMs from guys, and sometimes I would answer. And I know that he was getting DMs from girls, although he never told me. We dated for a year and then he asked me to marry him. Of course I said yes. I thought this was his way of telling me that he was going to commit to me 100%. After 6 months of being married, I started getting really suspicious. He would never leave his phone unattended, and if we were having dinner, he would always put his phone face down. I know you all know that's a red flag. Basically, he was hiding his phone from me like all the time. One night we got super drunk and I made sure to wait until he fell asleep. I got on his phone and found Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I found out my husband was using Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge all at the same time. But yeah, and cheating on me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So I got him drunk enough that he fell asleep. I got onto his phone and I found all the dating apps. I quickly screenshot every conversation he'd had on each of the apps. I was literally on his phone for 4 hours. Like, I didn't sleep at all that night. And the whole time I was reading his messages, I was crying. Like, I literally thought he was dedicated to me. I sent myself all of the screenshots and then deleted them from his phone. I also went through his Instagram and found a bunch of DMs from different girls. And a lot of them were big influencers. I can spill so much tea about that, by the way. I found a bunch of naked pictures from girls as well, and he even had a freaking Snapchat. At that point, I couldn't look anymore. So here's what I did. I invited both of our families to our house for dinner, ordered from a super fancy restaurant, and made sure everyone was coming. When we sat down to dinner, I told him I was going to go get my laptop. He asked me why, and I told him to give me a second. He literally thought I was going to give him a big surprise. That's when I exposed him in front of both of our families. Part 3 is up. 3 of how I found out my husband was using dating apps, cheating on me, and I exposed him in front of both of our families. So as everyone is sitting down and having dinner, I start a slideshow of all the DMs, pictures that had been sent between him and all these girls. Yes, I was petty enough to make a slideshow. My husband looks at me and tells me to take it down. Of course I didn't. That's when his mom got up from her chair and slapped him straight across the face. Of course my husband started crying instantly. His dad even grabbed him by the shoulders and shook him. My family was in shock. They were so disappointed in him. Mind you, him and my mom had a great relationship. He hung out with my family all the time. That's when I asked him for a divorce and I told him I wanted everything. By the way, my husband and I own a business and he's got his own money. So I ended up taking more than half of the business, 3 out of the 4 cars that he owns, and lots of money. But here's the thing, I still love him. Even though I have my own apartment and we live separately, he comes over all the time for, you know what? Like, we still love each other and still like each other, but I can't get past the fact that he actually cheated on me. He's asking for me to go back with him, but honestly, I don't know if I should. Once a cheater, always a cheater, right? But I'm gonna expose myself. I cheated on him too. What do I do? Story time about how my crazy ex-girlfriend is trying to control my life, take over my Instagram, and keeps DMing girls on Instagram to block me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So most of you know that this girl DM'd me and asked me to block her boyfriend. Well, I contacted her boyfriend, told her about it, and he told me his story time about her. I met my crazy ex last year. We actually started talking at a party. We live in the same city and have the same friends, so I knew about her. After the night I met her at the party, I decided to ask her out. I mean, she looked like a normal, sweet girl, but little did I know that she was gonna make my life miserable. So we started following each other on Instagram and exchanged phone numbers. We went to the beach and had a really nice first date. Again, super sweet girl. We went out on 3 more dates before I asked her to be my girlfriend. On the 4th date, she came over to my family's house and we had lunch. Of course, she made the best impression on my entire family. I mean, she kind of seemed like too good to be true, you know? She was super cool, easy to talk to, and really funny. The only person out of my family that did not like her was my sister. My sister told me that she got the impression she was only acting the way she thought I wanted her to act. I told her she was being paranoid and to give her a chance. So about 2 weeks into us dating, she started staying over at my apartment. But here's the thing, she basically moved in. She brought over a bag of clothes, her toothbrush, moisturizer and shit, like girly stuff that I just had no idea about. I didn't say anything to her, but in my mind I was like, whoa, this is moving a little too fast. A few days later, one of my friends had his bachelor party. So of course I told her that I was gonna go, and she got really mad. She told me that if she couldn't go to the party, then I shouldn't go at all. I explained to her that this party had been planned for months now. She then grabbed my phone and called my friend whose bachelor party it was, and she basically asked him if she could come. My friend thought it was super weird, but eventually said yes. So my crazy girlfriend got herself invited to the bachelor party. And guess what? It was at a trip club. So she spent the entire time telling me that she was super uncomfortable and didn't let me have fun at all. I barely spent time with my friends and the bachelor because she wanted me to stay with her because she felt so uncomfortable. I asked her if she wanted to go home and she said yes. I told her I'd go get her a cab, but she started to cry and told me that I needed to leave with her too. That's when I put my foot down. I mean, for her to show up to the party was bad enough, but now she's asking me to leave? I told her I was not going to leave with her and that she needed to give me space. She started begging and crying. I couldn't believe my eyes. She had never behaved this way before. I put her into the cab and she went home. Then she ignored me for 4 days and I had to beg her to talk to me. I told my sister what was going on and my sister got really angry. She said it wasn't normal for her to be behaving that way so early into the relationship and that I shouldn't be begging her. So I stopped. A few days later, she shows up to my apartment angry because I stopped chasing her. She told me that clearly I didn't love her. Mind you, we hadn't told each other we loved each other. When I told her I didn't love her back, she started yelling and running up and down the hallway in my apartment building. I told her to calm down and one of my neighbors came outside and asked if she was okay. She ran into my apartment and pretended like nothing had happened. This is where it gets crazy. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my crazy ex is trying to take over my life, my Instagram, and keeps DMing girls to block me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So a few days after she ran up and down my hallway acting all crazy, I asked her if she wanted to take a break. Of course, she said no. And she told me the best thing was for her to move in with me. Like, what? I mean, I had one foot out the door and this girl was trying to move in. Then I just had to be honest with her. I told her I didn't like how she invited herself to my friend's bachelor party, how she ruined the night for me, and then basically acted all crazy. I mean, we had only been dating for 2 weeks at that point. She started to apologize and told me if there was anything I could do to forgive her. I felt bad for her, so I told her I'd give her a second chance. Worst decision of my life. Then she was suddenly back on her best behavior. This is when she started asking me questions about Instagram. She wanted to know who were the girls that I followed on Instagram. So I told her they were just girls that I didn't even know. Then she pulls out her phone and shows me my Instagram and starts scrolling through the list of all the people I follow. One by one, she started pulling up profiles and asking me if I knew the girls. I told her that if it bothered her that much, then she should just stop looking at my Instagram. That's when she told me she wanted to check my DMs just for her peace of mind. Of course, I had been DMing with other girls, but that was before I even started dating her. So I basically told her that she would find conversations from before we started dating. I made her promise not to get mad and she promised. I gave her my phone and she started checking my DMs. She saw there were no new conversations, but she asked me if she could read through the other messages with other girls. I mean, some of these girls were only friends. I put my foot down and I said no to give me my phone back. She refused and started trying to read those conversations. So I snatched my phone from her hand and told her that she was being crazy. Later that night when I went to sleep, she decided to go snooping on my Instagram again. Unfortunately for her, I caught her. And when she gave me my phone back, she had changed my password. So I couldn't even get into my Instagram anymore. So of course I broke up with her and told her to leave. A few days later, my sister heard that my ex was telling everyone she broke up with me because I hit her. Everyone was believing her. She even called my boss and told him that I had been abusing her for weeks. Thankfully, my boss didn't believe her. He knows me since I was a kid and knows that I would never touch a woman like that. That's when I heard from girls on Instagram telling me that my ex was telling them to block me. And that's when I heard from Esther Tanya. 4 days ago, my sister bumped into my ex and confronted her about everything. She told my sister I cheated on her, that I hit her, and my sister punched her. She even threatened to press charges against my sister. My mom had enough and reached out to my ex's mom. By the way, my ex's mom had no idea she was doing any of this. Her mom called me and told me that she had done things like this before, and that the best thing for me to do was just to ignore her and hope that she didn't do anything else crazy. What do I do?
Story time about how I exposed my abusive, toxic boyfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend is and has always been very charming. He has a ton of friends and everyone loves him. He's a very good-looking guy and girls are always chasing him.
I met him 2 years ago at a party. I had heard a bunch of stuff about him. I heard that he was a player and that he cheated on all of his girlfriends. So when he came up to me at the party, I was really cold. I basically told him I didn't want to talk to him and that I would never give him my number. And unfortunately, this made him try even harder. He could never take no for an answer. He spent an hour trying to convince me to go to have breakfast with him the next day. He was so charming and so good looking. Of course, I eventually said yes. Even a few of his guy friends at the party told me not to go. But of course, I ended up going with him to breakfast the next day. We hung out a few times and then he told me that he liked that I wasn't easy. He told me that I was different from other girls and he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes because I was starting to catch feelings. One night we went out with his friends and he started calling me stupid in front of them. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I exposed my abusive, toxic boyfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So we went out with his friends one night and he started calling me stupid in front of them. He had never done this before and I was really surprised. I thought maybe he was just doing it to impress his guy friends. That's when I asked him straight up in front of his friends why he kept calling me stupid. One of his friends steps up and says, yeah, why do you keep calling her stupid? He stayed quiet for a second and didn't know what to say. Then he just laughed it off and said, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was doing that. That's when his friends started asking me questions about myself. I told him I was studying to be an engineer and that I had graduated with top honors. Well, let's just say they were all super impressed. We finally got into his car and he was driving me home. I was upset at him, so I decided not to give him a kiss goodnight. I started getting out of the car and he grabbed my wrist really hard. He pulled me back into the car and forcefully kissed me. He said that I embarrassed him in front of his friends, but that he'd give me a pass for it. I was actually in shock. A few weeks later, we were at the mall and he pulled my hair because he said I was looking at some guy. I tried to get up and leave and he wouldn't let me. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how I exposed my abusive, toxic boyfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So at the mall, he pulled my hair back because he thought I was looking at a guy. Then I tried to get up from the table, but he wouldn't let me. That's when he said he was going to have to control me more from now on, because clearly I was trying to look for other guys. Then he dropped me off at my dorm room and insisted on coming up. I told him I didn't want him to and that we should reconsider the relationship. I told him he needed to cool off and reconsider how he treated me. That's when he started to cry instantly. He started apologizing and told me that I was right. Then he told me that he loved me. We hadn't used that word before. I didn't realize at the time that he was totally manipulating me. And unfortunately, I decided to give him another chance. A few days later, he asked me why I didn't tell him I loved him back. I told him I just wasn't sure. Then he started yelling at me, telling me that there were so many girls ready for him to be single, and that he had a girl text him every single night, but he would say no just because of me. So I told him I loved him. After that, he was a lot nicer. Until one night, he slapped me. Part 4 is up. Part 4 of how I exposed my abusive, toxic boyfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. One night, he took me out to dinner and started asking me all these weird questions. He wanted to know about my last ex and why we broke up. And when I didn't give him enough information, he got really angry. When we got in his car, he slapped me and told me that I was a liar. After that, he just got worse. He would randomly just push me up against a wall if I annoyed him. He would constantly take my cell phone and start checking it. He even made me give him the password to my email. I decided that I was going to start recording all the abuse. I started recording all of our conversations and even set up a camera in my room. And of course, I had all this proof. One day I finally told him I didn't want to be with him anymore and he threatened me. I also told him that I was going to go to the police. Then he told me I would never be able to leave him and that no one would believe me because he never left bruises. That's when he started stalking me. He would also show up at my apartment and try to force his way in. He would grab me and try to kiss me and I would just push him away. So I finally went to the police. And I also went to the head of the school. I finally got a restraining order and the school expelled him. If you've experienced any of this, please get out of your relationship. Don't make my mistake.
Tender touch, drum glove, staying up just to talk to you. You stayed in touch, 2 continents, through all odds. Seems every night, yeah, all the time I'm calling out to you. Seems every time I take a drink, I'm reaching out for you. Seems I'm always late.
Story time about how I found out my roommate put cameras all over our apartment and was spying on me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I've been living with my roommate for 2 months now. She says she's a model, but she does a lot of other stuff. But like, if you look at her Instagram, she's a straight up model. Oh yeah, she's also trying to be an actress. Needless to say, she struggles with paying the rent. Me, on the other hand, I work in finance and I have no problem paying rent. In fact, I helped her pay for our deposit. I help her with groceries every month, so basically I treat her really well. Her and I have been friends for about 4 years now, but we were never really best friends. And to be honest with you guys, I really didn't know her very well when we moved in together. Because of COVID, I've been working from home and it's been amazing. My roommate is never home. Also, she has a lot of friends, so she's always out. Last week, she came home and installed some speakers into our living room and our kitchen. I didn't think anything about it. I was just like, okay, cool. She asked me if I wanted one for my room and I told her I'd let her know. Later on that day, I see a freaking speaker in my room. 2 days ago, I had a boy over in my house. He asked me why I had cameras all over my place. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I found out my roommate put cameras all over our apartment and was spying on me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Listen to me on Instagram. But one day I have a boy over and we're watching Netflix. That's when he starts looking around my apartment and asks me why I have cameras installed. I was like, what cameras? He's like, all those speaker things are cameras. Don't you know that? That's when I nearly had a panic attack. He grabbed them, opened them up, and showed me the camera that was inside. Like I said, my roommate told me they were speakers and she even offered to put one in my room, which she did. That's when he told me that my roommate has been spying on me and recording everything I've been doing while I've been home alone. He then suggested we go into her room and see if she had one in there. We walk into her room and start searching. That's when I get a message from my roommate. It's a picture of me and the guy in her bedroom. And she started saying that I was stealing from her room and that she was going to take legal action. Of course, being smarter than her, I know I'm not breaking any laws. When I told her that she had been recording me the whole time and that I was the one that was going to take legal action, she told me she was sending the cops over. That's when my friend opens her laptop and finds all the videos she had recorded of me. Guess what? She had been uploading them to a website where people were paying to watch me. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how I found out my roommate put cameras in our apartment to record me and sell it on the internet. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. After I found all the footage on her laptop, I went straight to the cops. The cops came back with me to my apartment, and when she arrived, they arrested her. Then she started saying that she had no idea how any of that got there, and that the guy that sold the speakers, aka the cameras, to her was just some guy that she met on the street, and that she thought she was getting a good deal. She says that he was probably the one that was spying on us. But obviously, all the proof is on her laptop. She was selling my videos on 4 websites. And guess what? She was making a lot of money. She only spent 2 nights in jail. Her dad is a pretty powerful guy, so we got her out of jail. Her parents want to give me money so that I won't talk about it again because they say that it's going to ruin her future acting career. I don't know what to do. Should I accept the money and never talk about it again? Or should I expose her? I mean, she's really not famous or anything. I could take the money and expose her later on if she does become famous. But I did reach out to all her old roommates and friends and told them what she did. One of her roommates even told me she did the same thing to her. I'm also considering getting a restraining order. What do you guys think I should do? Story time about how my roommate tried to kill my dog and blame it on me. This is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My roommate is literally the craziest person I've ever met. It's a freaking nightmare. Wait till you hear everything she's done. Her and I moved in together at the beginning of the year, so we haven't been living together for that long. But before that, I considered her one of my best friends. We would hang out all the time. Oh yeah, and she loved my dog. I had just gotten out of a relationship and I told her I wanted to find an apartment and she suggested we live together, so of course we went and found an apartment. Things were good for the first 2 months. We had movie nights, we would cook for each other, and we would just go about our business without any problems. Luckily, I work from home, so I'm always with my dog. Whenever I have an errand to run, I'll just leave her in my room and she usually sleeps. A month ago, I come home and I hear my roommate yelling at my dog. But my roommate didn't realize I was home. When she saw me, she picked up my dog and pretended that she was just joking. I did not like it at all, so I confronted her and I asked her why she was yelling at my dog. She said she wasn't and that I must have heard wrong. The following day, she went to work and left the door open. My dog was about to run out and we live on a busy street. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my roommate tried to kill my dog and blame it on me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So my crazy roommate started leaving our front door open, knowing very well that my dog could escape at any moment, and we lived on a busy street, God forbid. So I would constantly tell my roommate to stop leaving the door open. That's when she told me that she doesn't know how that's happening and that somebody else must be doing it. This girl was literally trying to convince me that someone was opening our door on purpose. So I finally decided to confront my roommate. I asked her why she was leaving the door open and why she yelled at my dog. And then she confessed that she actually hates dogs. She thinks they're gross and they don't belong in a house. She also told me that she always pretended to like my dog so that I wouldn't get offended. I told her that I thought the best thing for us was for me to move out. She starts to cry and begs me not to leave. She told me that she'll try to tolerate my dog more. After that, she gave me a printed sheet of paper with rules on it. Basically all the things my dog can't do. For example, my dog can't hang out in the living room or even sit on the couch, which she always did. And the biggest rule of all, she did not want her in the bathroom or the kitchen. She wanted her to be in my room all day. This is where it gets scary. Part 3 is Part 3 of how my crazy roommate tried to kill my dog. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. When she gave me all the new rules of how my dog had to behave, I told her I was definitely moving out. That's when she told me that she wished my dog was dead. She told me that my dog was coming in between her and my relationship. Ew. I literally had to sit her down and explain to her that my dog is like my child. I love my dog so much. I would do anything for my dog. Then she asked me if I loved her. I was like, yes, of course I love you, but my dog is like my child. So if I need to move out, I will. Then she gave me the silent treatment. A few days later, I tell her I'm gonna go to my friend's house. I get in my car and drive away, but I realize I forgot something, so I drive back home. That's when I walk into the apartment and I see my roommate holding my dog over the balcony. She was literally about to drop her. I grabbed my dog and I ran away. I went straight to the police and I filed a restraining order. But the police went to talk to her and she told them that I was the one that tried to throw my dog over. Thankfully, the police don't believe her, but now I have to find a place to live. How am I gonna go to my apartment and get all my stuff? What should I do? Story time about how I set up my boyfriend to cheat on me so that I could break up with him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I'm at the airport, so I'm sorry if it's noisy. My boyfriend and I have been together for way too long. When our relationship first started, I was constantly chasing him. He never wanted a relationship and basically didn't want to commit to me. So basically, he was trying to be an F-boy while he was with me. And of course, I let him do whatever he wanted because I was too afraid to lose him. I didn't want to be that annoying, nagging girlfriend, so I just never said anything to him. Fast forward 5 years. I've had a huge glow up since we started dating. I lost weight, I got super fit at the gym, like I have abs now. I opened up my own nail salon, and I even got myself a car and a house. Well, let's just say that he stayed the same. In fact, he has no ambitions to getting a better job or anything, and it really annoys me. He started talking about getting married, and I was like, hell nah. But I don't know how to tell him that I don't want to be with him anymore. I mean, I love him, but I just don't want to be with him anymore. And because I'm too much of a coward to actually break up with him, I set him up to cheat on me. I found this girl on Instagram, and I told her to DM my boyfriend. He DM'd her back. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I got my boyfriend to cheat on me so that I could break up with him. So I got this girl on Instagram to DM him, and this girl was totally his type. Basically, she looked like me but with blonde hair. So she sent him a little DM. He wasted no time and he got back to her. That same day, they set up a freaking date. So I told this girl that all she had to do was go out with him. Like, meet him at a restaurant, but that was it. Little did I know that she had a crush on him. And it makes sense now thinking about it because my friend recommended her, and my friend afterward told me that she actually had a crush on him. A few days later, she sends me a picture of him sleeping in her bed, without a shirt on. And she basically tells me everything that happened. So now, I have all this proof. But guess what? I actually got really pissed. It broke my heart because I didn't expect him to do that. And he was totally avoiding all my calls and messages. He finally came over to my house, and that's when I showed him all of the receipts. All the pictures and messages between him and the girl. That's when he told me that she drugged him and forced him into doing it. Of course, I knew that wasn't true. Then he pulls out a ring and asked me to marry him. That's when he got on his knees and started begging. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how I set up my boyfriend to cheat on me so that I could break up with him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. As he's begging on his hands and knees for me to marry him, gets a call from the girl that he cheated on me with. He puts the phone in his pocket and he started acting all nervous, so that's how I knew. That's when I told him to show me his phone. Then he ran to the bathroom and threw it into the toilet. Then he locked himself in my bathroom and basically begged me for 3 hours to stay with him. Told me that he would never be able to find anyone as good as I was, and that he loved me and blah 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 blah. At this point, I told him I was gonna call the cops to get him out, but I just couldn't bring myself to it. I really felt bad for him. I mean, after all, I did set him up. He eventually left and I didn't speak to him for a few weeks. A few days ago, I actually started talking to this new guy. He's been super flaky, and every time we decide to go out, he always bails. So now I'm thinking maybe I should take my ex back. He sent me flowers, but I've been trying to ignore him. But my parents don't want me to get back with him. Part of me thinks that he was probably already cheating on me. I mean, he DM'd that girl really quick. I honestly don't know what to do, and I'm even starting to feel guilty about what I did. At the same time, he totally shouldn't have cheated. What do you guys think I should do?